it feels like, to me at least right now, Chicago Bears fans fit into really one of three camps. You have the camp where I'm at, where every win is just fool's gold. It's just more problems than it's worth. And it's going to create some potential ramifications and impacts that could be significant and severe for next year and for years going forward. We're tired of the cycle of mediocrity and saying enough is enough. And it's time for a change. Then you have like that middle group of Bears fans that are well aware that the Bears are even fortunate to be in this spot where they could win and get into the playoffs in week 17, or even lose and still technically find a way to backdoor their asses into the playoffs in week 17. You look at these guys and they're saying, I know reality isn't great, but since this team is so mediocre so often, a little bit of a taste of the playoffs would feel good to me. And I'm okay with the long-term impacts because it doesn't matter because they suck anyways. Hey, you know what? For them, I say, I feel you. Like, you just taken a slightly divergent path from me and my approach and philosophy, but I will not totally shame and hate on you. Because you probably have sat there and watched this team for years and you're like, hey, it's about that time of the half decade to where they might actually get in a playoff appearance. So got to enjoy it while you can. And it is what it is, and they've won too many games to truly tank and get a quarterback that could really change the trajectory of this franchise in the future. So you got to do the best with what you got. Not the approach that I take right now. Not the approach some other Bears fans take either, obviously. But I at least get that one. It's the third tier of Bears fans, that third camp, that third category, that I just don't get. It's these Bears fans that are sitting there and buying into this hook, line, and sinker, thinking all of a sudden that the Bears offense has magically figured everything out, that them scoring 4 straight games of 30 or more points against really garbage-ass NFL defenses, like really, really bad, bottom-of-the-barrel defenses, and facing off against teams that are either blatantly tanking like the Jacksonville Jaguars or teams that have already fired their head coach and general manager like the Detroit Lions and Houston Texans. They are pointing to this and saying that Mitch has figured it out and Bill Lazor's a genius play caller and this offense is starting to hum. And if they can get into the playoffs, by God, they're going to make some noise. And you never know. You think back to the 05 Steelers and the 07 Giants and the 2010 Packers and these teams that sat there and had to win 3 games in the playoffs on the road to get to the Super Bowl, and then they ultimately won. And they're running away with themselves. Many of those folks were just a few weeks ago talking about how ugly it looked, and it's time to blow the whole damn thing up. But as pathetically predictable of a pattern of behavior as they've exhibited over the years, they allow themselves to get rope-a-doped and sucked back in, so now they're sitting there and losing their goddamn minds. And for that third group of fans, the ones that think this is legit and think this is real, why are you so excited about an 8-7 team? Why? Are the standards that low? But you could argue yes, because we're talking about the mediocrity of the McCaskey way. Like, is 8-7 really a season you should be celebrating? 8-7? This is what you're raging about on Twitter at me for? This is where you're trying to sit there and say that this team could do something, get into the playoffs, and make some noise? Really? Really? Because their offense, all of a sudden, the past few games, has exploited incredibly favorable matchups against really, really bad defenses and teams outside of the Vikings who had nothing to play for. Talking about these last 4 weeks of games, they had nothing to play for, and they all stink. And never mind the fact that you want to point to that Detroit game. Ding dong, dumb dicks. The Bears couldn't even win that one. It was just the football gods coming and collecting on the karma of that opening game win that the Bears didn't deserve. You're celebrating 8-7. All the while, if DeAndre Swift doesn't drop that pass in opening week, you're talking about 7-18. If you then also don't have the Falcons be the Falcons and do Dan Quinn things, they lose to them, and you're talking about a 6-9 team, right? Like, what is there to celebrate? They're much closer to being a 5 or 6 win team than they are right now a 10 or 11 win team. The hell is wrong with you? Seriously. That does matter. Like, the name of the game is to win Super Bowls, not hoping to God you could sneak into the back door of the playoffs with a win against a Green Bay Packers team that you hardly ever fucking beat. Or hoping that in a battle of the backup bowl with the Rams and the Cardinals, that the Cardinals lose so that way you slide into the back door of the playoffs even with the loss. I don't get it. In reality, what is more of a 5 or 6 win team happens to be 8-7. And you guys have lost your goddamn minds. All the while, what you found out in this season is that Mitch was terrible early on in the year, and he got benched for Nick Foles. So you come into the season, Mitch didn't progress. He didn't do any better. The decision was made, so the guy you took number 2 overall after trading up from 3-2 to get him and giving up picks that became real legit Pro Bowl players like Alvin Kamara and Fred Warner, now not only is not viewed to be part of your long-term future, he's not even going to finish the season as a starter. But then this decision is made to go to Foles, and eventually they go on to lose 6 straight games. You bring Trubisky back, and coming off of a bye, 2 weeks to prepare, they get trounced in prime time by the Packers. So what this season has told you is that Trubisky wasn't even good enough to realistically hold off Nick Foles. Your head coach, the alleged 2018 NFL Coach of the Year, which is a farce in and of itself. If anything, it should have been Vic Fangio if you're talking about somebody on the Bears coaching staff deserving that award. You're talking about a guy who made the decision, quick leash on Trubisky to go to Foles, and Foles stunk the damn joint up. So it shows you that your head coach makes really bad decisions, which should not be a new thing for Bears fans because there are plenty of numbskull Nagy moments, and we could talk about them for days. Then, making the decision to go back and coming out so ill-equipped and so ill-prepared, now you're talking about, well, now Bill Lazor's got the play-calling duties and so forth. And now, eventually, as you start to face off against crappy teams that have thrown in the towel with really shitty defenses, they're able to structure the game plan around Mitch. And what that means is, it's not accentuate his strengths as much as it is hide his many negatives. They don't put him in situations where he has to, process the entire field and go through his progressions. He doesn't have to do any of that. They don't ask him to stretch it down the field a ton because they know he's not going to consistently be able to do that because half the time he can't hit the blind side of a fucking barn. And you guys are sitting here and celebrating an 8-7 record because the former failed offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals now comes in and is able to better strategize a game plan in his play calling around his limited starting quarterback, which is something that the supposed offensive wonder kid, head coach Matt Nagy, couldn't figure out how to do in 3 fucking years. So your quarterback's still not any better. Your play calling got better because your head coach gave up those duties, which also points to the fact not only did he get the decision wrong to bench Trubisky for Foles, now he comes back to Trubisky, and because Trubisky is somewhat feasting, not even fully feasting, but somewhat feasting against inferior defenses, now you see how the play calling should look with a quarterback like Trubisky, and you're saying, okay, so not only does he make dumb decisions, but it's clear how much different the play calling is, so the one thing he's supposed to bring to the table, he doesn't even really freaking do. To which some of you will say, well, Matt Nagy's more of a culture guy. Culture guy my ass. See some comparisons to Mike Tomlin. You know what Mike Tomlin did? He won a Super Bowl. And he went to another Super Bowl. And his team has been a consistent contender. He's certainly fallen flat on his face with his teams over the years in many playoff appearances, yes. But they've been a consistent contender. And he has a Lombardi trophy. And he came close to winning a second one. It's not even close. Stop making really bad comparisons. And you're talking about 8-7 like this is something glorious so you could slide into the back door of the playoffs. And what, get smashed by a 2 seed or maybe a 3 seed in the opening round? Like, how delusional are you to think that this Bears team can actually make a run? Like, even if you want to ignore the, hey, every win you get is further screwing up your draft position. Well, the Bears most years naturally screw up their draft position no matter where they're picking. See Mitchell Trubisky, number 2 overall. So it doesn't matter. I kind of buy that at this point. But you're celebrating this 8-7 record, knowing win, lose, playoffs or not, there's no way in hell that Pace and Nagy are going to be fired. And then we're sitting here talking about, now you're going to run the table, bring everybody back, including Mitch. You're just digging your heels in deeper on the problems that already exist. It's like peak abusive relationship crap here. The Bears keep beating you up and you keep taking it and loving it and saying, you know what, my God, I deserved it. But anybody that thinks that we need dramatic change here, they're not a real fan. I'm a true fan because I'm the idiot that accepts mediocrity year after year, decade after fucking decade. I didn't even think about it like this. Last year, it was horrible. And they went 8-8. In Nagy's first year in 2018. Mitch's second year in the league, they went 12-4. So you're talking about no real progression or growth here or improvement from 2019 to 2020 in the record. Like even if you say, well, 9 wins is more than 8. Come on, give me a fucking break. And that's even assuming that they're going to beat Green Bay in Week 17, really? So you're more than likely talking about an 8-8 record for the second year in a row. But because the league, and leave it to the NFL to screw all this up, is that they hadn't expanded it to be 17th per conference. More likely than not, Bears fans wouldn't really be this dorky right now and stupid. They would sit there and realize, oh, you know what? Now that the playoffs aren't a possibility, the whole perspective changes. Because a few weeks ago, it sure as hell was different from pretty much everybody. But now you get this glimmer of hope of nothing, a backdoor into the 7th seed of the NFC playoff picture, and now you guys have lost your frickin' minds. And all the while, by the way, you've got a defense that you've invested massively and heavily into. A unit that has guys like Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, Roquan Smith, who many of you feel like should have been all pro this year or at least Pro Bowl. And for the Pro Bowl piece, I agree with you. Kyle Fuller, Eddie Jackson, you invested big money in Robert Quinn, even though he didn't fit your fucking defensive system. All of that investment and all that talent on the defensive side of the ball, and Chuck Pagano in 2 years has taken him from an elite unit to middle of the road. Like that takes a special type of suck, which is exactly what the hell Chuck Pagano is. And Bears fans are excited because the Bears offense has managed to start scoring more points. Look, they've had 4 straight games scoring 30 or more points since the first they did it in 1965. Like, this is about as stupid as trying to say that Mitchell Trubisky has the highest quarterback rating in Bears history. Number 1, when you compare shit to shit, it's still shit. Number 2, also misleading because quarterback ratings in previous eras were naturally lower because the game was changed and different. So what Trubisky's quarterback rating is now is below average, where other people like a McMahon or somebody, when they were playing, it was average or above average. You get what I'm saying? Like this whole notion of, let's compare it. Oh, they haven't done this in 5.5 decades. Well, if anything, it's representative of a larger epidemic within the organization. All those years of fans buying into that McCaskey bullshit about Bears football and going to build around the defense and the running game and all this crap that doesn't consistently win championships for them. So don't hold up 4 straight games of 30-plus points on offense that they haven't done since 1965 and Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus' rookie frickin' years as that meaning any type of good thing whatsoever. If anything, again, it just shines the light on the bigger problems that have permeated this organization from top to bottom for decades. So now you're excited about an offense that's somewhat feasted against crappy competition, a defense that has shown itself to not be at the same level that it was a couple of years ago, even though even more has been invested in it in terms of draft picks, in terms of free agent money, in terms of trades, everything else. Like, the hell am I missing here? You're excited at the thought of going 8-8 and maybe sliding into the playoffs, or going 9-7 and still being the 6th or 7th seed? So that way we can run it back and maybe do it again the next year? Like, if the Bears hadn't been in the playoffs in 15 or 20 seasons, like if this was the Buffalo Bills of a few years ago, or even if this was the Cleveland Browns now, I could understand being excited about 8-7 because the perspective matters, the context matters, and the history matters. Like, the Bears have enough of these 7-9, 8-8, 9-7 seasons. We've seen plenty of that. And where has it gotten them? Absolutely nowhere! They've got a head coach who doesn't know what the hell he's doing for the thing that he's brought in to know what the hell he was supposed to do. You've got a general manager who's assembled this team that's missed in key spots and key areas in big, big effing ways. You still don't have a long-term answer at quarterback, and ding-dong dump dits, Trubisky still ain't it. You can say, well, he's better than Grossman or Cade McNown, the other first-round quarterback picks this organization's had in the past 2+ decades. Okay, and what does that even mean? God. Excited about a mediocre team playing overall mediocre football during the duration of an entire season, but excited and giggly tits because your team can backdoor their asses into a meaningless playoff appearance. And you say, well, it's not a meaningless playoff appearance because they aren't doing shit in the playoffs. Get frickin' real. So you're going to tell me that if the Bears got into the playoffs as a 7th seed, potentially in 3 straight weeks, this team would be equipped to go on the road and beat some combination of the Seahawks, Saints, and Packers, respectively. Do you really believe that? Do you really? Do you really? You can call me negative all you want. I'm just being realistic here. To me, the real negativity is the consistently mediocre product that the Bears have put out year after year after year. Don't blame me because I'm looking bigger picture. Don't blame me because I'm not excited about mediocrity. And what really blows my mind about all of this, when you talk about Chicago and that third camp of Bears fans, is you have seen examples, recent relevant examples in your own city of teams that bottomed out, either intentionally tanked or just sucked for a really long time, and then they built themselves back up, became contenders, won championships. You saw the Hawks do that. They were bad for years. Finally got in a position where they could get guys like Kane and Taves. And all of a sudden, bam, bam, bada bing, bada boom, you're winning 3 Stanley effing Cups. Were those down years? The Dirk Graham, Alpo Suhonen years? Like, were those worth it if you're a Blackhawks fan? Abso-freaking-lutely! You think those Blackhawks fans looking back would sit there and say, man, I would have much rather been a 7th or 8th seed in the playoffs than the Stanley Cup every year. You know, because you always get in there, you always got a chance. No, you don't. You saw the Cubs completely gut themselves, intentionally tank, and build themselves a half-decade worth of a contending team, and they won a goddamn World Series for the first time in 108 years. The White Sox are at the end of their tanking cycle, and you can talk trash about them hiring Tony La Russa all you want. That's a Reinsdorf decision. You've never seen one. But there was a White Sox team that still bottomed out, realized they had to get worse to get better. And they have. They've got a young, exciting team that does have the potential to someday win a World Series in the next couple of years. And you could say, well, the Bulls have been tanking for 2+ decades. Yeah, but the Bulls are also run by Reinsdorf. And he allowed Krause to run them into the ground. And he was way too loyal to Gar Forman and John Paxson. And if anything, that proves the larger point of if you don't truly bottom out and you always try to sit there and hang around in the mix, you end up like the goddamn Bulls. Or in this case, I guess you'd say, the Bulls ended up like the Bears. But for somehow, some way, for some reason, you got this bucket of Bears fans and some in that middle bucket that just refused to jump on board with this, that refused to accept this, that refused to buy into this. And I don't know why. You've seen recent examples. I don't care if it's different sports. You can make it work in this sport. You've literally seen recent, notable examples of this working with teams in that same city. But y'all want to sit there and continue to be 8-8, 9-7, 7-9, 6-10, 10-6, and act like everything's hunky-dory and not demand the big positive changes from top to bottom that this organization really needs. So you be happy about this mediocre-ass football team with a declining defense, a still mediocre starting quarterback, where the head coach was brought in to be one thing above all else, and he's not that. And oh, by the way, makes really bad decisions and does a poor job managing the game. It's like an Andy Reid without any of the redeeming qualities, the many that the Walrus has. Y'all want to be excited because they have a chance to make the playoffs to where they'll most likely get smoked in the first round. So that way we could run it back again the next year and basically experience either the same thing or have the team finish like 6-10. Man, I don't know about any of y'all, but clock's ticking on me. This is 3.5 decades of this crap. I'm not going to be alive forever. I don't want to continue to have to perpetually live in this cycle of mediocrity. And if you guys are okay with that, I guess so be it. But you shouldn't be surprised when people like me come at you and clown your asses like you deserve to be clowned. Because you do. Get with the program. And stop buying in to the mediocrity of the McCaskey way. And 8-17 is nothing to celebrate. So stop acting like this is okay or acceptable.